Yes, indeed. Please,
It's a ride.
take a look from
Walk down there.
have a look. Welcome to JayneeAM's book launch, JayneeAM's book launch of the writings. Whilst Jayne sets herself up, she's asked me to read the preface. Thank you all for coming here today. Of course, we'd like to acknowledge the Wujibwa Wild people of Bunjong Nation, upon which the lands we here meet today, and our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So nice to see you all, and thank you for coming along. Jaynee's very excited to be releasing the writings. 2 years worth of hard work, dedication, and the writings began in June of 2020 and continued into early 2022, and was strongly encouraged by dear friend Reverend Michael Baum of the North Shore Spiritual Church in Sydney. At the end of 2020, Jayne writes that she wasn't sure if she should write this book or whether she should continue. She received some guidance from a very special spiritual advisor who assisted her in this journey to say that there may just very well be a greater purpose to her writings, which have culminated in this book here. There's a pattern and a flow to these chronologically written writings, prophetic notions, subliminal suggestions, all the little bits and pieces that we pick up in our day-to-day lives, distilled into something that I think we can all share and experience. She writes about many interesting things. In 2021, Jayne's TV broke down, which I feel is actually an essential part of any writer's journey. If you can turn off the television and really tune in to what you're hearing, feeling, and be lucky enough to create this beautiful book, which I've been lucky enough to read multiple times now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, Jayne. It's really, really lovely write. So Jayne launched one of her first books up in Darwin for a fringe festival, and she most certainly is a fringe writer, and some of the content within this book can be quite confronting, as it really does challenge the notions of psychology, subliminal messaging, futurism, transhumanism, faith, God, spirits, energies, and everything in between. Jayne would like to thank myself and Vincent in this, which we both truly appreciate, but we'll glaze over that because we've done nothing. Jayne's done it all, and she really is quite a brilliant writer. And she does thank us for bringing us, and all you too, the people who actually come to support local writers, authentic writers, people who are publishing from the ground without censorship because they believe in what they're writing, and they believe that it should be shared with people like yourself. The vision of the promise, described in poetry as a testament of the concept to the writings and the conception of the writings. In another exhibition, Land of the Warthogs, which we may get to see later on today if our internet works, have been a draw card for visual arts till now, and that was accepted in the Melbourne Fringe Festival, and since then Jayne has also been involved in the Darwin Fringe Festival, the Kyogle Writers Festival, and other little events. So thank you all for joining us here. That's a very quick glaze over. Thank you all for joining us here for Jayne's book launch, and this is JayneeAM. This is JayneeAM's website here. You can find all of Jayne's work at jayne.com.au. And Jayne's put this together herself, and again, thank you, Jayne, for letting me discuss this book with you, because it really is a stunning book. So to warm up the audience, to warm up all the people that might get to hear about this book in the future, would you like to maybe start with a reading from this piece?
Right, I'm going to use this because I've had to sort of, dare I say, offload. And I'm just getting over it. So I'm just going to start by reading something I did in 2020, because these are all documented a little bit like a journal, because I was doing my random meditations and writing them up with dates. So, and I had a feeling that, well, initially I didn't think I was going to publish this, so it's whatever it is. So I'll start with this one. Do I need to describe my writing style with regard to the meditations or not?
I think it's up to you, Jayne. Maybe
A little bit, okay. Well, my meditation, I've been doing these meditations for 20 years or something with a medium, a spiritualist medium, who taught us how to visualize and a lot of our meditations were actually guided, but by the time I'd done like nearly 20 years of working with other people doing the creative visualizations, I was able to creatively visualize for myself. So this was a little bit of a departure from having to have someone else guide the meditation. So it was a bit of a breakthrough for me and an experiment for me to see if I could actually go under in meditation and manage to pull myself out and write down what I was seeing. So I did that, and then initially I didn't take it too seriously, and then after a while it started to form its own flow, you could say. So this is one of the earlier ones. So you'll see when I speak some of the images that I was seeing, and then anyway, we'll just do it like that. So it's like stream of consciousness. I don't know what I'm saying or why it's all just coming to me. Thumbs up goes the cartoon character with a big fat hand. There's a broken window many floors up on a skyscraper. There's a leaking pipe that needs re-welding. The millipede is curling its tail, hanging from a green branch. The cartoon man is back. I see his face has a funny handlebar moustache. Something is coming out of the side of what could be a spaceship. All 3D printed construction with surveillance. A plinth on a Roman or a Greek temple, a door frame and a metal tower rail. There's a lot going on, but it is fragmented and nothing has come together as yet. Scattered, but with some hope for the future. Like there is an alternative plan, but I need my reading glasses. Meanwhile, I take refuge in this funny little town.
I like that, Jane. I like the imagery in that one, Jane. It's quite vivid. You're speaking as though when these writings come to you, oh, thank you, but I'm quite happy to project my voice, but you're the reciter, so most certainly. The most important part is that our wonderful audience get to hear your poetry, which is full of not only imagery but symbology, and in that piece, and our audience can see the title cover of this work, and even in this piece, which is using some very strong imagery, but as well as symbology, reflecting back to this cover, metal bars, spaceships, construction, surveillance. It does echo back, and I think there's a theme that runs through this. On the front cover, you've got disclose it all, and then within these pieces, we've got the channeling, but then we've also got things that, well, let's face it, if you were to publish through a regular publishing house, they probably wouldn't let you write about 3D printing or surveillance state. And then I very much also enjoy the way you bring it back to a human living perspective. I need my reading glasses. I'm a person, I have bad vision, or I have a sore back, or I have stubbed my toe. You've got these very, very abstract ideas going back to Roman or Greek temples, and then taking it right back to here I am in my room, channeling something and experiencing this reality. But I am very curious. Disclose it all. So as we go through the poems that you've selected out to recite today, we'll probably explore a little bit more of these ideas and themes that come up in these poems. But just before we begin that, this cover, the cover that everyone can see here, disclose it all. What does that statement mean to you?
Well, I'm just trying to think where I should start with that. Could I start with how I did the painting?
By all means.
Okay, well, when I first did this painting, it was in Darwin for my last book launch, and that was for Visions of a New Kind. And I found an old cyclone door from the last Darwin cyclone, and it just, I just liked it, so I thought, well, I think I'll use the back of this door to create an illustration to one of the poems that is in the last chapter of the Visions. And because my only this particular poem is actually a premonition. It was a dream I'd had, as was Warthogs. They're the only two dreams that I really had, you could say, words that I had to wake up and write down. Now, I never really understood the promise until around about 2018, when a lot of things started to happen. I didn't even know what the word disclose meant. I'd never come across it before. But anyway, I created this painting to go with the poem, The Promise, which I'd written before 1987. So I've got the words to the poem. The poem is actually on the back of the book, and the painting that goes with it is on the front.
Congratulations, Jane.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, I'll see you later.
Okay, so when I was doing this painting, I really didn't know, like I said, what this disclosure was all about, but it's sort of becoming more and more, even now, kind of like mainstream media. It wasn't for a long time, but now a lot of things are really becoming, you could say, disclosed. A lot of our mainstream media is, I've discovered, corporately owned, and it seems to control what the narrative is that we get,
Yes.
rather than the real narrative. And the more I explored the concept of disclose it all, the more I uncovered a number of alternative narratives to the mainstream.
Which I suppose not only does it show in the symbology of the cover, and I'm sure anyone looking at this cover can see some symbology there and go, "Ooh, what might be in this?" And the context and the nature of many of these poems is actually not only the unreality of our reality or the flux of what is reality, but the way that you've chronologically written these works means that as the subliminal or the experience of being a living human from 2020 to 2022, you're contesting with what you see and hear in media, alternative sources of media, and also what you experience as a writer and what you channel. So that's how, I suppose, me reading through this, how I can see this culmination of myths and story arcs across cultures with dates and events and coincidental timings that pop up time and time again throughout these poems. And you said to me earlier that one of your main values is freedom of choice in life, that an individual has that freedom to choose. And we've had some very controversial choices made for us in the last few years. I'm actually curious, would you like to share another piece from this book before we continue our discussion?
It's sort of a bit hard sometimes to, so I appreciate you covering this for me, because I think I'd wander off on a bit of a tangent and I wouldn't be able to keep to the point, and so thank you. I'm going to read this one, which was done on the 6th of the 11th, 2020. And again, when I was doing my meditations, I just would let my mind go blank, so I didn't know what the image was I was going to see. And then once the image came in, quite often a bit of my own thoughts would come in too. So I just keep writing them all down. Okay. A facial recognition box comes up in the middle of a huge white mist or cloud, but it is turned sideways. The face is looking to the left. I'm also thinking of Melbourne Cup with no one at the stadium, the race, and then the horse gets put down. I remember the old Zager and Evans song in the year 2525. Who needs to wait that long when 2520 is already like this? What we need to change is obvious to get our balance back as a human race. What is not obvious is the amount of time it has taken to get to this point, that we have to make a quick turnaround. We are needing extreme tolerance for extreme attitudes about extreme measures being taken for a virus pandemic that has been taken to an extreme. I wonder how long before the virus is no longer the excuse for being extreme. We need democracy and balance, not on high alert.
I find that to be a very profound poem, actually, Jayne. I don't know what our audience thinks of that work, but I see a theme here that's incredibly fascinating, and many of us might know that very recently, only weeks ago, Coles and Woolworth brought in facial recognition technology into their thing, something that we probably didn't hear about up until very recently, yet this one dated 06/11/2020. Quite an interesting, again, if we're going back to these writings and looking at our imagery on the cover, to think, where do the messages that we as writers receive this inspiration from, whether it be our pineal gland, whether it be an angel on our shoulder, whether it be our gut instinct, or some sort of subconscious, somehow, some part of you has managed to premonition or predict a facial recognition box coming through 2 years later. It's quite an eventuality, and it'll be that way till we all die, sadly. But then again, we look through this simple poem. We mentioned the Melbourne Cup horses and the exploitation of animals as a wonderful metaphor possibly for humans and what we may be becoming to elite aspects of the humanity as a whole. Following through this poem, recording back to the song 2525, which as we all know, if man is even still alive, or ladies as well. I really don't like that.
Woman can't survive.
Really hard. It really does turn me off religion. I love God, but I can't understand the gender side of things. Virus being taken for a pandemic. So again, and many of our audience may have mixed opinions on such a thing, but again, when hailing back to the notion of autonomy and an individual's freedom to make choice, it is really interesting that again, in 2020, they had not yet fully invented the vaccine, and it was still a notion. But to have extreme attitudes, extreme measures, as a foresight for actual extreme measures, it heralds some really strong poem. Really strong writing style. I think you should be very proud of that one. And just curiously, just my curious, what do you think of the state of democracy right now? You finished this poem with, we need democracy in balance, not on high alert.
Well, I guess, and again, through a lot of my learning curve came through actually doing these writings and spending a lot of time in isolation in 2020 and 2022, because people weren't really, we were being pushed into a position where we couldn't even really go out and talk to each other. And I found that extremely dehumanising. And to deal with that and the anxiety I was feeling, because I had no one to bounce off, and other people were at different stages of working out what they thought this was all about. So that's why the meditations became really important, because for me it was a way of calming down my anxiety. So I would recommend it to anyone as a way of calming down their anxiety. Try the meditation, try the technique I'm passing on, because I'm happy for other people to do it too. It's like, for me it was more about losing our freedom to be human in a way. And I think on the back of that is when I discovered Vince, and I discovered that Vince was running these things called Poets Breakfasts, and that's when I had this desire to start a sort of add the wooden bomb group to the Poets Breakfast kind of circuit, so that we could start getting people to speak their minds, no matter what they had to say, with each other, to get us out of our isolation. But initially we all had to deal with our isolation, and that was including me, so it really seemed to affect me to the extent that I had to start writing again.
Indeed. And that is a process of meditation,
Yeah.
and then writing. Is that reflecting dream in the night, turn around and write something down, or is this mainly just through your meditation teacher that you were mentioning earlier?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a mixture of things, I guess, but I mean, I've been writing since I was 4. I didn't really actually see myself as a writer, even though I've written 2 books, or 3 actually, but I've been writing since I was about 4, and for many, many years I used to just put them on scraps of paper and throw them under the bed, and quite a lot of the time I started writing from dreams that would come. I would get pictures of dreams and I'd write them down again under the bed. So that Visions of a New Kind, the updated version, was more combination of more recent stuff, but that was the last book I thought I'd ever do. I never ever thought I would do this. And my meditation teacher kept going, oh, you're going to write another book. No, I'm not writing another book.
You've written another book.
And I was like, I really fought her on that because of the effort of writing a book, the problem with publishers. I was so lucky to find publishers, because most of them want to take all your copyright off you, and 90% of the money goes to them. I just couldn't do that. So this was self-funded, which obviously I don't think any other type of publisher would let a lot of my stuff that's in here out because of what I'm saying. So,
and that is the experience. So this book that you see before you was created by Jaynee with a small circle of allies who've assisted her. That is manuscript written by Jaynee, and then with the support of a small publishing house that did a copy edit for you.
Yeah.
you designed the cover and put it together using just a PDF document with the measurements set to the spine.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know that, but this spine is probably the hardest part of the journey when I was making sure that spine's the right size for your book cover.
Yeah.
And then you sent it to the printer, and then it was here.
That's right. So you can do it. I mean, they're going up in price now, unfortunately, because everything's going up in price. So now it's becoming more and more difficult to do hard copy books, and everything's so digitalised, which is really sad for people who love reading physical books.
It is sad for the smell of a book, but it is a brilliant segue for your website, which is another side of Jaynee's coin, which is, although we can't scroll through just now, but there's books, there's visual, there's video, and there's audio files on this website as well. So Jaynee's repertoire of creation is not just literacy or literature, forgive me, but it's also photographs and videos. So please check out the website just as sort of some inspiration for anyone who may want to become a writer or want to try and develop that portfolio and take that next step. Jaynee is a very good example of how you go from a person to believing in yourself as a writer, to actualizing that belief, to then doing what we see here, which is going public and publicly coming out of the closet as a full-fledged writer, person, which is brilliant. And on that back, would you like to share another piece from your book?
Sure, I can. And let me see. So I'll flip to 2020. Well, actually, I might go to 2022 and bring it up to something that might be a bit more like what's going on up here in this part of the world. I recently, after those floods in the northern rivers, this one wasn't actually written as a under meditation, but I did get inspired, and he took me down and showed me what the devastation after the floods in Lismore. And when I came back, it just poured out of me in 5 minutes, so I wrote this one. The lights are out in the northern rivers. There is nobody home. Abandoned buildings and lifestyles. Businesses destroyed forever. No sign of life from no rescue squads. They have all left. A week ago today, life as we know it in the disaster zones floated away in a tyrant, in a river of sewage, dead cattle, marooned people, bodies in the water. The stench of death is overwhelming. 2 weeks ago, life as we knew it back then, teeming with life, the hustle and the bustle of people, and events too busy to notice the ominous clouds on the horizon, perpetrated by an even darker force.
Beautiful. Difficult to hear, actually, and I don't think there's a single person in this region who doesn't understand that poem straight off the bat. And it is, and I suppose it does come back to, and for me, and this is purely just my opinion, Jane, it's not on your work, and I please don't want anyone else to believe this, but I think a poem like this really does tie those two ideas together, that idea of the abstract poet channeling things from the ether, and then the poet who is picking up little clips in the media, subliminal things, and actually witnessing what's happening in your community, in your region, in the environment, in your region, in the sky, what's happening in the sky, what's happening in the stars at night. And that's a very good segue between the two things. If we think about the context of all these writings and the unreality of our reality, and you know, on this page, I flick to the page next to it and I see that you've got DUMBs here, D-U-M-B-S, standing for Deep Underground Military Bases. Yes, indeed, because that's
I don't leave any stone unturned.
no stone unturned, indeed.
I love being on the edge, as Vince also knows.
Well, it does. It brings up a good point though, Jane, because it is in this last line of this poem, and this is where things get very controversial, and that's why it is a work of poetic fiction / channeling. You go perpetrated by an even darker force, and we are in a place today, a world of deep fakes and very, very, very interesting technology that humans may not have a full grasp of. And I think that really permeates the undercurrent of a lot of these poems, is that ever distrustful concern, like an unyielding faith that things will get better and that humanity will rise from a darkness, but there's clearly a darkness that envelops almost every aspect of every poem. And that darkness seems to be off the back of things like the dumbs, or war, or disclosure, or the deception of the government, or all of the things that seem to be macro, really out there, unaffecting of the individual, yet when we read a poem like this one about the floods, we see that actually no, these things that are super abstract to our day-to-day lives have actually come home and hit. And the themes over and over and over again seem to repeat that, of flowers at a funeral, you know. I really like the line in one of your poems, Edison did not invent the light bulb. Is that the line?
Oh, I'd have to go and find that one again. I was making jokes, well, not jokes, but I was questioning our history, because the history that we think what we think is our history, we might discover very soon was never our history, and it was all part of some massive propaganda machine. I mean, I keep myself open to the possibility that I could be wrong, but then I could be right.
I think that's
what's
where
that Sid Vicious song? I might be wrong, I might be right.
Right, well, it may much
might
be.
Might be Go on.
Well, you very much might be on the point there, Jane, and I think that many people in the community are feeling an undercurrent of sentiment or something similar, that there is something going on, that's something that we're not being told, and it is thick in these writings from 2020 to 2022 as a chronological diary of channeled poetic experience. I think it's a message in a bottle for the censorship that we see in our social media feeds, in our mainstream media news channels, and also in the, that half an hour news cycle where we might get 10 things out of a world where there's probably 100 billion things happening. You've managed to capture what it feels like on a day-to-day basis, which very well may help us with some of that clarity later on down the line, when things get a little muddy and we're not quite sure what actually happened in this period of time, because it's a very brilliant period of time to capture a chronology of experience. And I'd love for you to share any more from the book.
All right, well, I just kind of bouncing off what you said. I think, the message in the bottle idea, it was sort of a little bit like Anne Frank and the diary, is it the diary of World War II that she wrote? And, I think if people could do this kind of journal writing now, and I don't know whether you want to bury it in the ground in a bottle, literally, or whatever you do, it's a personal testimony to this time that we've all lived through. Because I do feel, and I don't even say I believe, but I actually really strongly feel that we're going to come out of this into a very different world. And I feel like a lot of what our personal experiences were, whether they're even our anxieties and our confusion, will make sense down the track. We will forgive ourselves for those things, and what we experience will be gold dust, because this is what it is to be human in a time when I do believe we're in a war. I know some people don't believe that. Depends what you think the war is about, or what, is it a war against a virus? Is it a war against the human kind? Question mark, but again, whichever way we look at it, it's a form of a war. And so a lot of typical things with wars is that they do not tell you the truth. You don't get the truth till the very end of the war, so to speak, and it's in retrospect. So, I think it's important. So I'm hoping that I can light the way for other people to do similar things, I'd like to share the poem The Promise, even though this is a very, very old poem and I'm not sure how much of it's going to make sense, but because I wrote it before 1984 and I didn't really understand it until 2001 when the Twin Towers had collapsed, and at that time I started to, start to smell a rat, you might say, the Twin Towers, and I couldn't kind of follow the mainstream explanation of that, and out of the middle of that came the writing from the dream. So I'll just read it, and that's the front cover. That's this picture. So that's the match here, and this was meant to be man's idea of a perfect man. It's taken from Leonardo da Vinci painting, and it's the Fibonacci sequence. And anyway, that's Manhattan skyline where the right about the time of the Twin Towers. So I'll read this. Even as the hair from my face became a blackened match, I held it to my eyes, and the flame of life reappeared at its tip. As I held it to the light, it became as brilliant as the sun of reality, whereupon I was turned by some unseen force to face an ancient Oriental man who said, "This is the beginning of the end. This is the war to end wars. This is the time when humankind will achieve their greatest point of spiritual maturity, and the true birth of the new millennium will have begun." So indeed, beneath me I saw a huge city rise at a right angle to my dimension, and on refocusing my vision I saw it emerge from a hole in the ground from where it had been hidden for so long. I watched this ancient secret spring to life in 1 second with all its 21st century technology. I was outside of Earth's time, joyous in our planet's excellent balance of spirit, mind and matter reunited. So that's my promise for the planet.
And that's your
for us all.
Is that something that you felt was a bit channeled pre these writings?
Well, because I didn't at the time when I got the dream understand any of that, really, I didn't know what that was. I just woke up and, I've got to write these words down. So, and that was the words that came out of the dream.
I saw then that you almost became emotional at reading that.
Yeah.
If it's not too personal, can I
That's
ask
okay.
what inside yourself feels so
Well,
in
I
tune
guess,
about
yeah,
that?
I might cry. I know in myself that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through whatever we are personally experiencing, that this thing is that we're all being subjected to. And I do know that the one thing that is standing in a lot of our way is the loss of hope, the over-anxiety, the being constantly bamboozled and confused, and made to feel like we're losing our freedoms. So I guess I've put this together because I need to remind myself to stay strong, but it's also for other people to gain hopefully something, that might give them just that little flicker of we can get through this. That's my message.
And there is hope in these
Yeah.
poems, and there's hundreds of poems in here. There's probably 200 poems in here. Maybe there's
that's,
a lot.
well, they're journal entries, but they've ended up kind of both. Yeah.
Oh, the writings. I certainly shouldn't call them poems because they certainly are not poems. They are your writings.
Yeah.
And Jayne very much has specifically said to me that is a style that she prefers to write from, as they are writings, not prose, not poetry, not anything in between, just what they are. And I see the hope in your writing, Jayne. I see it through this book. This beautiful tail end to just one poem here. Somewhere in the sky, in black and white, then I see a whole different concept of a lighthouse. On a cliff to warn seafarers about the shore. Something we romanticised once is not romantic now, and we could be menacing if we didn't understand how it worked or what it was for. I like that in reflection of the term of hope and a small ship being battered around in a raging sea and a lighthouse being a beacon of hope. But again, if you don't know what that lighthouse is for, you may very well see it as danger.
Yeah.
Sadly, or who knows, but maybe these poems are the lighthouse, maybe these poems are the ship.
Well, I think we've all